My name is Eric Abitbol. I'm a practice leader in environment security and conflict transformation at Universalia, also the organization's president and CEO. My work has focused on issues of environmental peace building now for a good 20 years or so. A great deal of my work is focused on transboundary cooperation around water resources in conflict environments. A good amount of that has been spent in the conflictual Middle East, in the Israeli-Palestinian, Jordanian, and broader context as well. But it has also expanded into issues of climate change and climate finance, issues around a whole range of other transboundary natural resources and challenges. In addition to that, I'm an advisory committee member with the Journal of Peacebuilding and Development. We have recently published a special issue of the Journal of Peacebuilding and Development on climate change and the humanitarian development peacebuilding nexus. And a number of the articles, as you could well imagine, in that special issue are focused on environmental peacebuilding issues, challenges, approaches, from very grassroots initiatives and concerns right through to considerations of systems transformation and the identification of entry points and the production of co-benefits across climate change and the humanitarian development and peacebuilding nexus. I'm based in Canada, and I work internationally with partners all over the global South and North. The title of my presentation and discussion is Transboundary Cooperation on Water and in Fragile Contexts. This is a topic that is situated within the field of environmental peace building. It is an area that's been, frankly, greatly studied and continues to be an area of interest, given the extent of transboundary water resources and water courses, surface water, groundwater, and related hydrological and hydropolitical processes across the planet, which provide both a connecting point between different conflict parties, and also has proven to be, given the essential nature of water resources, a location for transboundary cooperation between conflicting parties for a number of reasons and on a number of different kind of related issue areas. I'm particularly interested in what is possible in conflictual environments in ways that enable, one, cooperation between conflict parties, two, a cooperation that in particular transcends the boundaries of what is understood to be possible in conflict environments, and three, where that cooperation produces relations and structures, in fact, and structures relations between parties that one, are different than dominant asymmetric hydropolitical relations, and two, produce equitable outcomes. I'm also particularly focused in on the different entry points and opportunities that are provided by transboundary water related cooperation, thinking about issues of governance, of institutional development, of epistemic community and relationship building in the scientific and technical realm, civil society cooperation, and the opportunities, risks, and outcomes that are produced by civil society and other actors engaging in transboundary cooperation. And I'm also interested, certainly, in the limitations and constraints associated with transboundary cooperation on water resources in conflictual environments, given that there is no panacea to the transformation of conflict. And any field that works on environmental peace building and generally in the realm of cooperation is also confronted with constraints, political economy constraints, resource constraints, risk-related constraints, and other constraints that also I think are important to consider. So the project itself, if you will, broadly speaking, is a project that really seeks to identify the frameworks, opportunities, benefits, and challenges associated with environmental peace building interventions in challenging transboundary contexts, and to understand some of the dilemmas and again opportunities that each of these contexts provide. The key issues for me are very much around power. And if you will, it is very much a research project, and I would say it's a lifetime research project around transboundary hydropolitical cooperation and power. I think there are a number of very interesting insights to be drawn from the Israeli-Palestinian environment, from the Horn of Africa environment, and a few other contexts in and around the world that allow us to highlight some of the key power issues around hydropolitical cooperation. I think the first thing that's really important to do is to think about what are the frameworks that we approach thinking about environmental peace building with, particularly on water cooperation and power. And frankly, it also is applicable to different natural resources, forest based resources, forests, looking at issues of climate change. These are also woven with power relations, and a great deal of the work that we do, and that I do, and that others do in the field, are thinking about how power is woven into the management of transboundary resources. And so part of this is around looking at issues of power, and then also looking at, of course, the transformation of power in and towards building equitable relations that are specific to the management of and governance of particular natural resources, water resources in this case, in particular contexts, but also thinking about the relations of power that are outside of or beyond, I would say, those resources themselves. And why do I say that? Because we're interested in looking at not only the management of resources themselves, but the way in which the issues around transboundary cooperation, natural resources management, and other related issues are situated within, nested within broader contexts of relationship, of conflict, of peacemaking, etc. So if we look at, for instance, Now, to dig into a little bit more specifically the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and context, water relations between Israelis and Palestinians, between Israelis, Palestinians, and Jordanians, between any configuration of those actors are situated not only as hydropolitical or hydro specific relations, but they're situated within a broader conflict. So if we look at, for instance, the developments that has been underway in various configurations now for a very, very good number of years at this point on the Red Sea, Dead Sea water conveyance, which has taken on many forms at this point and supported by the World Bank, by the Global Environment Facility, intent on building a conveyance system from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea to arrest the decline of the Dead Sea, which has been declining since the 1960s at more or less a meter per year, which is a really dramatic drop stemming primarily from the extraction of upstream waters to satisfy Israeli, Jordanian, and to a lesser extent Palestinian water needs, and perhaps even a little bit further upstream than that. But this water conveyance system that has been planned and has seen different kind of elements of progress over time was at one point referred to as a peace conduit or a peace canal, the Red Dead project, the Red Sea, Dead Sea water conveyance. It has multiple names. Part of the claim to peace of this particular infrastructural endeavor was to speak of a peace dividend to the Red Dead Canal or the Red Sea, Dead Sea water conveyance, the peace conduit. Questions around claims being made to a peace conduit or a peace dividend in this case, I think are very important to examine because of the nature of the claims themselves. And the claim to peace of what is designed as an environmental project to address dramatic ecological catastrophe that was human induced and that is human maintained becomes an environmental peace building initiative by virtue of the fact that you have an environmental intervention in a transboundary environment on a project that involves multiple transboundary issues with different actors involved, local, regional actors, as well as international ones. Now, the claim to peace and a peace dividend, I think, is one that needs to be examined because we can situate it at the two levels that I was mentioning earlier. One, which is specific to a project itself, and another, which is speaking to issues that are broader than the project itself. In this case, we talk about a peace conduit which creates and is anchored in the cooperation of Israelis, Palestinians, and Jordanians, along with their international partners, and all of those three actors, Middle Eastern actors, are proponents of the Red Dead conveyance. They are all looking through their cooperation to produce ostensibly environmental benefits and to create also, and this is where we now kind of traverse a little bit into the wider context to create economic benefits and opportunities, as well as satisfying the human needs for water of the different actors. But we need to consider also that a conduit like that is situated within a broader context of conflict and peacemaking. And this is where we then look at environmental peace building initiatives and assess them not only for the specific cooperation they create around water resources management, but more broadly, how they engage with some of the fundamental conflict issues. Those conflict issues in the Israeli-Palestinian Jordanian context are about the extent to which we're looking at Palestinian, Israeli, Jordanian, the building of equality between these different entities. In other words, we have a state, Jordan, another state, Israel, a Palestinian authority governing over specific areas of the Palestinian West Bank, and whether or not this an initiative like this allows for the further creation of a Palestinian state in the context of a two-state solution that has been the foundation of the Israeli-Palestinian peacemaking relationship since the 1960s in the wake of the 1967 war. This speaks to issues around occupation and the final status of the territory of the West Bank and of Israel, and what the final borders might look like. It speaks to issues of, or it can be drawn into an examination of issues related to human mobility in the territory of the Dead Sea, where all three proponent regional actors are looking to have an impact, and therefore speaking to issues of refugees, issues of settlements, issues of, again, human rights and human mobilities, and doing all of this in the context of ensuring human security, human rights, and the satisfaction of basic human needs. So we are challenged to examine the extent to which and the ways in which an environmental peace building, if you will, initiative like that is related to not only the specifics of cooperation and engagement around a resource itself, but the way in which that's situated more broadly within a conflict and peacemaking context, because it's also a context within which peacemaking has taken place. Another related point, still in the Israeli-Palestinian context, is that any one initiative that takes place in any environmental peace building initiative, if you will, that takes place in the Israeli-Palestinian and Jordanian context is also one that does not happen in isolation of others. And from a kind of monitoring, evaluation, and learning perspective, I think we have an ongoing challenge to not look at initiatives in isolation of one another. And this is, I think, a very important challenge for us, but is to think about the extent to which there is complementarity between different initiatives, the way in which we understand how different efforts, initiatives, and interventions contribute to building and situating and imagining and building, again, a future for the various peoples, political entities, and institutional ones in the future. And being able to provide learning about what is done, how things are done, what we can learn, and what are the frameworks that we really are looking to develop that are informed by this whole range of initiatives. So, and these are anchored in different theories and practices of environmental peace building. So, for instance, civil society organizations that create opportunities for communities on different sides, if you will, of the conflict and in the multiple geographies and complex geographies in the region are supported to engage with one another. The way in which water resources are equitably accessed, shared, distributed, what kind of innovative arrangements exist and constraints are imposed given conflict asymmetries and relational asymmetries in the region. What kind of economic development opportunities are created, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this has us thinking about the direct structural, cultural dimensions of conflict and of peacemaking and of environmental peacemaking and peace building that is situated within a cooperation that's specific to environmental resources related cooperation, but that goes much beyond it to look at the different ways in which these allow us to engage in efforts to and intent on a transformation of those wider conflictual dimensions, factors, relations. In a very different context, but related to some of the same relational issues at a foundational level, we can look at an initiative that has taken place now for some years, for a few years, that has been supported by CIWA, which is a cooperation in international waters in Africa, which is a multi-donor trust fund and program at the World Bank, which is supported by a number of donors, including Sweden, the Netherlands, and some others, all who have been and continue to be leaders in the field of transboundary water and broader environmental cooperation, and have provided over decades resources to all kinds of initiatives, including multi-donor trust funds at the World Bank, intent on supporting a sustainable environmental resources and water resources management, and increasingly supporting the transboundary dimension of that resource management, and even more so and more specifically acknowledging and supporting efforts to situate and support initiatives in those fragile conflict and violence affected contexts where the challenges are heightened and where there are constraints to cooperation at a number of different levels. So if we look at CIWA and the interventions of CIWA in the context of the Horn of Africa in particular, CIWA has provided resources and support, and drawing on the presence of World Bank staff and partners in the context of the Horn of Africa and across the Horn, and in particular in Somalia. The work of SIWA in Somalia engages and has engaged with a debate, and an important one in the field of environmental peace building, which is specific again to the question of power, which to which I have alluded, and which is essentially one of the defining parameters of my own larger and certainly shared research agenda with others. The question of power in the context of how best to enable and support cooperation between actors who are vastly asymmetric in their power. And so in the Horn of Africa, Somalia is and has been struggling for years and decades now with environmental challenges. It's currently, even as we speak, confronting terrible and dramatic challenges stemming from drought. The country itself has been fragmented from a governance perspective. It has a paucity of resources. It has been relatively institutionally confronting a number of challenges also to the development of those institutions, and particularly so in comparison with some of its more sophisticated, institutionally developed neighbors who are also not listed in the World Bank's fragility, conflict, and violence affected society list as countries like Somalia who are experiencing high intensity conflict. So the question has always been to enable transboundary cooperation. Should that transboundary cooperation be specifically supported and enabled through the building of transboundary institutions, through building cooperative processes and dynamics, and or by recognizing the different areas of asymmetry, of inequality, and intentionally seeking to strengthen the weaker of the parties so that they are in a more, over time, equal, symmetric relationship with other parties in transboundary environments, so that they could operate from a place of greater, if you will, equality and symmetry, and for this to resituate the strategic and operational context and relationship within which they are able to then plan, implement, and move forward in other ways. So what SIWA has done is adopted a multi-dimensional approach to its intervention, recognizing that it continues to be an ongoing debate whether or not that support should be to strengthen the weaker party or to support cooperative processes, and has done a number of things that I think are situated within the environmental peace building field. On the one hand, it has supported the institutional development, particularly on water resources management within Somalia, in particular to resituate the institutional relationship that Somalia shares with Ethiopia, given the transboundary nature of a number of resources, including the Juba and Shabelle rivers in the region. So institutional developments of in a number of ways in Somalia. The first has been to provide support to the development of the National Water Resources Strategy of Somalia, which has enabled Somalia to take a more strategic positioning and approach to the management of transboundary water resources. It's also contributed by working and providing capacity building to the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources of Somalia, and in so doing, strengthening the institutions that are responsible for managing, making decisions about water and other transboundary resources. SIWA has also provided support to the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, which is a regional organization, and building IGAD as an organization that is to enable and facilitate transboundary cooperation, which is very much the history of that organization, but increasingly so on transboundary water resources, on climate change issues, and on other related challenges, given that this speaks to issues of food security and other things. And by building that regional institution, it also facilitates transboundary cooperation of technical staff of the different countries who are working on technical issues, research issues, monitoring issues, other development-related issues, and taking some of that cooperation out of a kind of high political level, where some of the relations in the Horn of Africa are still difficult to pursue, but where at a technical level it is much easier for them to engage in transboundary information exchange, cooperation, learning, field missions, and that type of work. So the purpose then is to build transboundary communities, and for those transboundary epistemic communities themselves to build, if you will, a decision-making context and culture that is informed by information, experience, knowledge that comes from multiple and diverse sources. And this has, I think, quite dramatically had implications for the way in which Somalia and its neighbors interact with one another. So in thinking about the approaches to monitoring, evaluation, and learning, and also some of the more specific methods for doing so, there are a few real key points that I think are important to consider, and that these two cases that I've highlighted around the Israeli Palestinian and broader environment, and then also the work of SIWA in the Horn of Africa, have really brought to light. for me. The first is just focusing on the peace and conflict impact assessment work, given that we started with the Middle East. One of the real key methodological, if you will, approaches to environmental peace building and trying to understand and situate the work that is being done and the issues at stake and the outcomes that are claimed, being developed, possible, and out of reach, I think can be significantly pursued through analyses of peace and conflict impact assessments or peace and conflict effects studies and the sort, or conflict sensitivity analyses. Why? Well, the point, if you will, of environmental peace building, as I understand it, is to really understand and examine the extent to which interventions that are fundamentally environmental interventions or environmentally focused are also situated within conflict environments and are pursued in ways that ideally intentionally seek to have a transformative effect on the management of resources specifically and on wider conflict dynamics, structures, relations. So a peace and conflict impact assessment like study allows us to begin by framing the key issues at stake. And we can do that in ways that are specific to the environmental resources and those that are part of the wider, if you will, conflict and peacemaking environments. In so doing, we have choices to make methodologically about doing that from an expert perspective, doing that in ways that engage with stakeholders, doing that in ways that include participatory methods, doing that in ways that allow us to do a conflict mapping across the environmental kind of peace building landscape that goes from the resources to the wider conflict. And then to look at the ways in which interventions, actions, projects, programs are interacting with all of the dimensions of a PCIA framework. To what extent, to whose benefit, how this plays into the asymmetric relationship and the transformation of that asymmetry, and speaks to the range of issues across issues of human and other forms of security, final status issues, the very difficult, intractable issues, and also some of the maybe easier ones that allow us to identify areas where we can continue to build, as well as trying to get at some of the more difficult and challenging areas. We can then choose to have this go through any number of different iterative and participatory processes to make sense of this work and to look at innovative new ways to tackle some of, again, the more intractable dimensions that are identified. So peace and conflict impact assessments. I think the lesson methodologically that we draw from a lot of the SIWA work is the importance of theories of change. And the theories of change in the context of SIWA emerged, one, because the program itself has a theory of change. And the theory of change is frankly well developed and focuses on, in particular, areas around information and information sharing, institution and institutional development, and investment flows, and the ways in which those three I's, and they have now seen a fourth I around inclusion, contribute to ultimately sustainable water resource management, sustainable water resources development, and transboundary water cooperation. But we also find that in bringing together and using evaluative methods to examine a program like SIWA, which we have done, and in looking at different contexts through different case studies and the Horn of Africa, but also Southern Africa, also Lake Chad, also the Niger River Basin, also Southern Africa and the Zambezi, also the Nile Basin, and others through case studies and interviewing and other mixed methodological approaches, has allowed us to actually revise dimensions or further inform dimensions of the theory of change that allow us to see some of the theoretical work that has emerged from a lot of this very grounded research around the world also manifest in its very specific ways, but also manifest in the context of the work that has been done by Cooperation of International Waters in Africa, in the Horn of Africa, but more broadly. So, for instance, looking at the transformation of asymmetry and making that visible, given the relationship of asymmetry between Somalia and Ethiopia, and how building some of the institutions and strategies in Ethiopia, in Somalia, excuse me, have contributed to transforming a little bit of that relational environment and relations between Somalia and Ethiopia. So asymmetric relational change. Another dimension is around the functionalist discourse and theory of change, where supporting transboundary cooperation of technical communities and around technical issues, and doing that through the building of transboundary institutions moves actors into thinking about furthering cooperation, how that changes the relational environment between them, how that allows them to begin thinking over the longer term about their extended cooperative environments and horizon over the longer term. And so using such theories of change then allows us to identify areas and approaches for further support, intervention, and work with partners, creating synergies with other donors, creating work with other programmatic partners on the ground, and being increasingly aligned and strategic and responsive to the needs and priorities of those most directly engaged and those most directly impacted by the issues that are at stake. In terms of some of the key takeaways, I think they're situated at a few different levels. The first is the importance of context when we're thinking of monitoring evaluation and learning in the field of environmental peace building. Context is critical. Why? Because the frameworks that we develop, certainly the interventions that that partners and stakeholders construct and deploy are affected by context. And so we can be informed by some more generic guidance, but any work in the field of monitoring and evaluation and learning needs to be then adapted significantly to contextual realities so that we can examine very specifically and with appropriate thought and consideration and even method the frameworks and issues at stake within particular contexts. So I think context is really critical. I alluded to method. I think it's really important for us to also associate our methods with the contexts within which we're working and the type of knowledge that we are looking to produce as related to the uses and users of the monitoring, evaluation, and learning approaches, processes, and outputs that come from our MEL related work. Methods of data collection. How are we likely to generate appropriate, transparent, confidential, truthful data? What are the relationship obligations that we have with those from whom we have collected data in terms of reporting and reporting back? What type of products are we looking to develop? Who will use these? Are they policy briefs that we're producing for kind of high-level or programmatic stakeholders? Are we looking at the development of monitoring frameworks and indicator frameworks? And who will be using them, and therefore the type of language that we use will be important here. I think we also need to go from context to method to use and user of our MEL, and then also to be acutely sensitive to the different type of challenges of particular resources. I think different resources are also such that they raise different kinds of challenges, whether we're talking about renewable or non-renewable resources, the type of resources that are privately owned or common pool resources. I think we have particular challenges associated with climate change, and we will be seeing very important and evolving considerations around climate change. I think we need to be aware fundamentally that monitoring, evaluation, and learning processes are situated within a political economy of knowledge, of institutions, and frankly also of intervention and of evaluation itself. So by being aware that, monitoring, evaluation, and learning, and I'm thinking in particular even of evaluation products as a resource, once resources enter into conflictual environments, they become part of that political economy. And as evaluators, we need to be mindful of the challenges of accessing data, the ways in which data and experience will be shaped by some of the outcomes that are believed to be possible or sought through evaluative processes by different stakeholders. The constraints to the circulation of that knowledge within the political economy, as described previously. And for us to therefore really consider the importance of the buy-in of diverse stakeholders to the importance of evaluation, of monitoring, evaluation, and learning processes. Because I do think, and maybe I'll end on this point, is that evaluative work, and frankly, more broadly, monitoring, evaluation, and learning work is part of an ecosystem. And it's an ecosystem of organizations, an ecosystem of development interventions, an ecosystem of actors, stakeholders, and knowledge. And it has a real important role to play in enabling knowledge, experience sharing, learning to inform what we do, how we do it, how we can do it better, more impactfully, mindful of all, I think, the challenges and considerations, some of which I have been able to outline in our session together here.